The best argument for the president or the former president's immunity claim is that even though the Supreme Court has not grappled with this precise issue, that is, can a president be criminally prosecuted for official acts within the ambit of his executive responsibilities, the court has grappled with an analogous situation involving President Nixon in the early 1980s, which involved a civil lawsuit. And I think
a sex scandal is rocking President Trump's case in Georgia. The Fulton County, Georgia District Attorney, Fani Willis, has been accused of appointing her lover as a special prosecutor in the case against Donald Trump. DA Fani Willis is responsible for taking Trump's mugshot, also allegedly financially benefited from hiring her lover, Nathan Wade.
2024 will go down as the year of great and fully coordinated illegal election interference by crooked Joe Biden, the worst and most corrupt president in the history of the United States, the DOJ, FBI, AGs, and DAs throughout the country. But despite it all, in the end, there will be a big and glorious victory for those brave and valiant patriots who want to make America great again. We will win, and we will win like never before, and we will turn our country around. Thank you very much. So now we've reached a point when a president of the United States has weaponized the Department of Justice as though we were a third world country or a banana republic. They don't want to run against me and never have. I'm leading in all of the polls against Biden. Republican candidates aren't. But I'm leading against him in all of the polls, and I'm leading by a lot. And based on the results of the failed Biden administration, the worst president in history, this will continue. But justice weaponization is a very dirty game to play. And it's never been used like this before, never in our country. We're not going to allow it to happen, and he shouldn't allow it to happen. Because if it does, it's a Pandora's box, and it opens that box, and a very ugly one at that. And we don't want that to take place in the United States of America. Thank you very much. They cheated on the election in so many ways. Ballot stuffing, the 51 intelligence agents, not getting approval from state legislatures, FBI Twitter files, and much, much more. The election was long over. I wasn't campaigning. I was just doing my job. I am entitled to immunity. I am absolutely entitled to immunity. If I don't get it, I'll be the only president in history to not get it. And if I don't get it, then Joe Biden doesn't get it. And his list of crimes is too long to talk about. Thank you very much. Everybody agrees that if I'm not entitled to presidential immunity, which I should be, I'm doing the affairs of state. I'm doing the affairs of the President of the United States and doing it well. We wouldn't have any of these problems if I were president. But if I'm not entitled to immunity as president, every other president would get that, then crooked Joe Biden would not be entitled to immunity. And when he left office, he would be, I assume, prosecuted for the horrible job he did in Afghanistan, killing soldiers, leaving Americans behind, leaving billions of dollars worth of military, brand new, beautiful military equipment that I bought in the hands of the Taliban, and basically surrendering. And there was no reason. We have to deal through strength. But all of the horrible things that he's done, allowing the attack on Israel, which would have never happened, the attack on Ukraine, which would have never happened, the possible attack on Taiwan, which possibly will happen, losing our energy independence. But maybe most of all, for purposes of immunity and going after Joe Biden, is allowing millions and millions of people to pour into our border, coming from jails and prisons, coming from mental institutions and insane asylums. and terrorists coming by the thousands. If I don't have immunity, then no other president would have immunity, and Joe Biden certainly wouldn't have had immunity. Would he, as an example, have immunity for all of the money he took from Russia, or for all of the money he took from China or Ukraine? Would he have immunity for the fact that he got rid of a prosecutor who was very unfriendly in Ukraine for $1 billion, and he's going to hold the money unless they get rid of him, and they got rid of him very quickly? Well, would he be prosecuted under that act, which is all on tape? Amazingly, he let it be on tape. Very illegal what he did. That's called quid pro quo. You remember that term? They used it on me, but I was totally innocent, and it was proven so. I was totally innocent. They impeached me, and I was totally innocent. But he said, you're not getting $1 billion unless you get rid of the prosecutor who's unfriendly to perhaps Hunter. And you know what? That's a terrible, terrible thing he did. So if I don't have immunity, he doesn't have immunity. And by the way, the statute of limitations goes back 6 years and sometimes more than that. Thank you very much. Almost everybody agrees, even most of the crazed radical left lunatics, that the Colorado decision is political delusion. You cannot take the vote away from the people. I'm leading in the election by a lot against Joe Biden. And in the primaries, I'm leading by 50, 60, and 70 points, the largest number ever recorded. How can you possibly take that vote away from the people and let it be determined by a court? Fortunately, almost every analyst, almost every political person and legal person says that that's exactly right. You cannot take the vote away from the people. Thank you very much. I wasn't campaigning. The election was over. I was doing my duty as president to expose and further investigate a rigged and stolen election. It was my obligation to do so. I had no choice. And the proof found voluminous and irrefutable evidence that the election of 2020, presidential election, was rigged. Therefore, among other reasons, of course I am entitled to immunity. Additionally, I did absolutely nothing wrong. I was acting as the President of the United States. This wasn't for me, this was for the country. Stop the witch hunt now. They ought to stop this crazy witch hunt now. We ought to get back to working and making America great again. Thank you very much. I want to thank almost everybody, even including perceived opponents from the so-called other side politically, who have spoken up against the radical left, Soros-backed New York State Attorney General, Letitia James, a disaster, who asked me to pay a fine of $370 million. Where did that come from? Plus other harmful things to New York. It's going to harm New York. After a many years long witch hunt for essentially borrowing money from a bank and paying the bank back in full ahead of schedule. There were no defaults, discounts, or anything other than profits for the bank. They were two absolutely perfect loans, perfect. The bank testified they were great loans. They wished all their loans were like that. The appellate division, New York State, gave us a victory, and the judge refused to acknowledge it. Also, it turned out that my financial statements were great. So I just want to thank everybody, and we are getting through this process, and hopefully for the benefit of New York State, everybody's watching, jobs are fleeing, we have a out-of-control Attorney General, and hopefully the judge will do something about that. Thank you very much. One of the most outrageous, illegal, and corrupt acts among many by the corrupt Soros-backed New York State Attorney General Tish James controlled Judge Engoron. He's controlled by Tish James, which is a horrible thing because she's bad news and everybody knows it. But it's his refusal to honor the appellate division's ruling that this witch hunt should be dismissed on statute of limitation grounds, among others. Not only did I do nothing wrong, great financial statements, it all came due and all came up during the trial. My statements are great, much better than anyone had any idea. Much, they're great. The expert witness said among the greatest financial statements he's ever seen. So the statements were great. There were no damages to anybody. There were no victims. The banks were happy. Think of it. I had a bank. They wanted to make a loan. They made a loan. I paid back the loan in full. No negotiations, no anything, no victims, no damages. The banks were happy. But the whole hoax should have been ended long before this pathetic excuse for a trial ever started. So you borrow money, you pay back the money, and you get sued by essentially the DOJ because they'll do anything. They went through millions of pages of documents, my documents, and they end up going after me over a loan that was repaid in full, no negotiation, no anything, that the bank was very happy with. It's a fix. It's a rigged system. Engoron, the judge, shockingly refused to follow the express orders of the highly respected appellate division in New York State, where we overwhelmingly won. The case is over. Such disrespect for an appeals court, the job of which is to protect New Yorkers from a runaway judge like perhaps Engoron, is unheard of in our country and smacks of banana republics and third world countries. Those tactics employed by crooked Joe Biden's other henchmen and people like deranged Jack Smith, who was brought in to try and get Trump, but he's not doing so well. The rule of law in New York State will never recover if this partisan attack is not immediately squashed. They're after his political opponent because Biden is losing badly to me in the polls. He's doing horribly. Essentially, he's a horrible president, and the people understand that. So they go after me when actually I've done a great job. They try saying I've done a bad job and a dishonest job, and that turned out to be false. And they didn't know what to do in the middle of the trial, but they kept it going. This trial should have never been brought. It should have been ended early. It should have gone to the commercial division like all other cases, but the judge, who's a Trump hater, refused to let it go. He refused under any circumstances to let it go. He had no victims. The banks testified. They were happy. They didn't even know what they were doing there. They got back all of their money. They got back all of their interest. Frankly, they wanted to make me the loan because that's what they do. They make loans, and they make money when they make loans. And this was a great loan for them, and they acknowledged that at the trial. And this is where they went after me. Now they want $370 million plus other things, but $370 million, which is far more than the loans, far more than the loans. They were perfect loans. The banker said, I wish we had all our loans like this. They ought to focus on violent crime in New York because it's driving people out of the state and leave people that pay millions and millions of dollars in taxes alone. Thank you very much. This is just a small piece of Mar-a-Lago in Palm Beach, Florida, probably the most expensive land anywhere in the world. A New York State judge named Engoron values it at just $18 million in order to help his and racist AG James, Letitia James, a racist and a corrupt person. It's a horrible case. It's a rigged case against me. So they say it's worth $18 million when in fact it's worth 50 to 100 times that amount. No jury, no victim, only profits and success to the bank. It's a witch hunt and it shouldn't be allowed to continue. The whole world is watching this case. But think of it, the judge came out and he said that Mar-a-Lago, because it was good for his narrative, he said Mar-a-Lago is worth $18 million. But it's worth 50 to 100 times that amount. But that was good for his narrative because he's a Trump hater. And we have to do something about this. This is a runaway judge. It's a disgraced attorney general who tried running for governor and failed very badly. She lost to our sitting governor by 97 points in the polls. We can't let this happen. They're using politics to run their court systems in New York, and hopefully the appellate division will step up, because I won the case in the appellate division. It was totally won. The judge refused to honor it, which is a first in the history of New York State. That's never happened before. The appellate division is the boss, and they ruled in my favor. And the judge said, I don't care if they ruled in your favor. I'm not going to obey it. I'm not going to abide by it. Can't let that happen. This is a corrupt state, and they have to straighten out their act, because everyone's leaving New York. They're leaving New York. The businesses are going. The taxes are going. The taxes, all the money that's paid by people is going. And it's things like this and a attorney general like Letitia James that forces people out. They don't look at violent crime. They don't look at murders. If you murder somebody, they leave you alone. If you do a great job and build a city, help build a city. I did a great job, paid millions and millions and millions of dollars in taxes. It's a shame. Never happened where they would do things like this. Never happened in the history of our country. But we're going to win, and we're going to turn this country around. We're going to help New York State, working with Democrats. We're going to help New York State turn around, and we're going to make our country, we're going to make our state great again. Thank you very much. Almost all experts and legal analysts have stated, for all to see, that the litigation before Judge Engoron is a sham and a disgrace, a dark time in the New York judicial history. It's a very fabled history, mostly good, but this is a very bad time for judicial history in New York and New York State. I did absolutely nothing wrong. The opposite. I did a great job. But most importantly, as they state very strongly, all of these analysts, I already won a vast majority of the case in the appellate division with their decision issued in June, a decision that Judge Engoron refuses to acknowledge or to accept in any form. He's a Trump hater at the highest level, just refuses to accept, think of it, an appellate decision, an appellate opinion. He incorrectly and perhaps fraudulently valued Mar-a-Lago at $18 million when, in fact, it's worth between 50 and 100 times more than that. But his disrespect of the appellate division and their opinion is far worse. The Attorney General, Letitia James, is a racist scoundrel who thinks she has total power and control over the judge. She gave him a fraudulent set of numbers to look at, and he bid on it hook, line, and sinker, and actually came up, based on her numbers, with this $18 million number for Mar-a-Lago. But he liked it because that made his numbers work, because they're trying to say that I overinflated the numbers, when in fact the numbers were very conservative. My financial statements were phenomenal. They were great. An expert witness actually said, among the greatest, among the best financial statements he's ever seen. But Judge Engoron didn't want to hear that, because that doesn't work for them. So somehow it'll all be corrected in the end. Somehow it will all be corrected and hopefully fair in the end. But watch what's happening. We have a corrupt attorney general putting pressure on a judge, and we'll see if the judge is going to do the right thing. But so far, it's been a very unfair witch hunt, and the whole country is watching, and this is why businesses aren't moving back to New York. This is a bad thing. Businesses aren't moving back, and the Attorney General, who presides over crime, should be looking at the tremendous violent crime taking place in New York, which is setting records. Murder and violent crime is setting records, and she's wasting her time on, as they said, the best financial statements they've ever seen. God bless America.